It's our turn, episode number 85, Expansions. In this episode, Mark and I talk about what makes a good game expansion, and I interview Heather O'Neill about her new game, Meeple Party.
This is the Dice Tower Network, adding games to your wish list since 2005.
Hosting for this episode is generously provided by our fantastic supporters on Patreon.com. If you'd like to help us out by pledging $1 per month or more, please visit patreon.com/OurTurnPodcast. Every dollar helps us to keep this show going strong. Hi, and welcome back to Our Turn. I'm Cathy Ford, and today I am pleased to welcome my sweet husband, Mark, back to the show in the guest host seat. Welcome. Welcome back, Mark.
Hey there, hi there, ho there, Mouseketeers.
So we usually start off the show by talking about what games we've been playing lately. And Mark, what have you got on your plate?
Well, between moving and diving into the still new expansion for World of Warcraft, I have not completely forsaken board games. One of the ones that I've played lately that I've really enjoyed was a nice little number called Dice Forge. Now, I know you've probably talked about it since we've played it quite a bit, but I just wanted to get my 2 cents worth in on how this game is a nifty, simple, yet strategically heavy board game.
It's quite unique in that you can change the dice faces.
Right. What you're doing is basically you're building dice. And that's something I haven't seen before in any game. The premise behind the game is that you are heroes. The gods are offering a seat in heaven to whichever hero defeats their rivals. And your courage and wits are your allies, supposedly. You're using divine dice. Every roll of the dice is called a divine blessing. And once you have this blessing, you can either forge dice, which is basically change out sides on your dice using gold, of course, as a medium of exchange. Or you can complete heroic tasks, slay beasts, conquer things, and thereby earning extra perks to your little empire you're building. It's everything from killing monsters which will award you points, killing monsters that'll award you individual dice faces. Yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen, keep an eye out for the ×3 dice face. Those are wonderful. And you build up these dice, you gather resources, moonstones, firestones, gold, and there was one other I thought. But you gather these resources and perform these tasks, and at the end of 9 rounds, you determine a winner by total number of points. And it's just incredibly, incredibly fun and challenging to figure out, okay, do I want to concentrate on one die to have a good die as opposed to just the starter die? Or do I want to spread out updating dice faces so that each die has a chance early on to hit it big?
And these are D6 dice, and they're nice and chunky. So when you're rolling them, they're kind of big in your hand.
They are.
But it's interesting, the mechanism they use for changing out the dice faces. I found that really interesting. I know when we first proposed playing this to Dwayne and Frank, Dwayne kind of looked at us a little skeptically and said, how do they manage that? Changing out the dice faces. And it was kind of fun to show him and to show Frank how to do it.
The dice faces snap into these cube frames, these D6 frames. And to take them out, you can take a corner of one of the dice faces and use it as a tool. Just sort of pry it out. Be careful, though. If you pry them out just right, they will fly like an eagle.
They do.
Yeah, all apologies to Steve Miller.
And also the one thing that I noticed is you and I played the game a couple of times before we introduced it to Dwayne and Frank, and we used the same pair of dice in both games. And then when we introduced it to Dwayne and Frank, I happened to hand you the same dice you've been using, me the same dice I've been using, and then they got dice that hadn't been used. And they had a little harder time getting the dice faces off. So
right. The plastic does break in a little bit.
Mm-hmm. But I haven't noticed that it's a problem that it's gotten too loose yet and, dice faces start falling out. So I think it's just there's a little bit of give there and it loosens up after repeated use, but I don't think it's going to go bad quickly.
Yeah, and this game was nominated for like a ton of awards. 2018, it was nominated at Origins for Best Board Game. It pulled down a couple of Golden Geek nominations, Most Innovative and Best Family Board Game. And I can understand why it didn't win, because it really is a really basically simple game, but it will fool you. Mm-hmm. Because this game has some meat on its bones. I mean, your card drafting, you're building dice, building your resource pool, resource management, and die rolling. But the look on someone's face when you've got one die comes up with the one of everything face, and the other die comes up with that *3 face. So it's victory points. That's the fourth one I was trying to remember. The fourth resource. That's right. Mm-hmm. And so you're getting with one roll of the dice, you're getting 2 moonstones, 2 firestones, 2 gold, and 2 victory points. 3. That's 3. Excuse me, 3 of each. You're right. ×3. I'm sorry. It can be a pretty good one. You can also buy extensions because your bank has so many spaces. But one of the earlier cards you can get cheaply are extension cards. Problem is, there are 4 extensions. This is a 4-player game. Yes, you can buy more than one extension.
And then somebody is left out.
And that is a serious, serious handicap, because when you're trying to, build up to these bigger and bigger dice you want to forge, stopping at 12 gold can be a pain in the neck, especially if you've got sights on buying multiple faces in a given turn, because you can do that. You can buy as many as you got money for. Mm-hmm. It's, like I said, it's a good, fast-paced game. It's easy to teach. It's easy to learn. It's easy to get into the swing of. You can get the spirit of things. I'd say this is probably going to be one of the better gateway games going forward.
I don't know that I would call it a gateway game. I was just thinking about that. I think this might be like a next step game. Not quite a gateway game, but not quite, a deeper strategy game. I think this might be more in line with 7 Wonders. You introduce someone to a game like one we're going to talk about here in a little bit called Dice of Crowns or Bang the Dice game.
I don't think there's that much between something like Bang the Dice game and this game. There's not that much difference.
You don't think the symbology would get in the way of it being a gateway game?
The symbology in this game is dead easy. I mean, a gold is a gold nugget. Moonstones and firestones are completely different, used for completely different things. And the wreath number is a victory point. Come on. How much more simple do you want your symbology to get?
Okay. I suppose you're right.
Yeah. Like I said, this is a really good game. It's crying out for an expansion. Thankfully, the dice gods have listened to us, and coming in 2019 will be Rebellion. Dice Forge Rebellion, which is going to be apparently put a little more contention in the game. But either way, it's looking forward. I rate it a 4 right now, right out of the box. Uh-huh. It's really good. It's solid. I don't see any bugs in it. The only potential bug down the road is that if those dice faces and the dice cubes get too loose to maintain their cohesiveness, and you start, shedding dice faces as you roll like a bad Lego design. Mm-hmm. But other than that, Dice Forge, go for it. It's definitely a 4.
And it plays well 2-player too. That I was really pleased with that.
It is great at all 3 player counts, 2, 3, and 4-player games. You get an extra round if you play 3 players, which I think is a little odd. Oh yeah, and do remember to count the rounds.
Yes.
We got into it and got playing and enjoyed it so much, we just completely forgot to count the rounds.
Yeah.
We probably had a 15-round game because, we haven't counted. Did you move the counter? No. Did you move the counter? No. Did you move the counter? No. Oh, well. So that is Dice Forge.
All right. First game I'm going to talk about is one that you bought me as a sweet gift, and it is based on one of my favorite series of books, and that is Dragon Riders of Pern. And yes, somebody did make it into a board game back in 1983. It was published by Mayfair Games. It was designed by Sam Lewis, and there are a whole slew of artists, one of which published a companion book to the Dragon Riders of Pern called The People of Pern. And that was Robin Wood. Robin was the artist on that book, along with Anne McCaffrey, who wrote about the characters. In this game, if you're familiar with the Dragon Riders of Pern books, this particular game is based on the second book that came out in that series called Dragon Quest. And in this game, you are playing We're Leaders. For those who don't know about the Dragon Riders of Pern, it was a series by Anne McCaffrey. Humans have settled on a planet in the distant future and named it Pern. It's supposed to be an agrarian society, a little lower level tech. They're settling there to get away from the technologically advanced society. They just want to be farmers and herders and, just live their lives as simple, human colonists. And about 8 years into settling on this planet, all of a sudden this stuff starts falling from the sky and it eats anything carbon-based. And so they have to devise a way to combat this, and they do this by taking an indigenous species that looks like a flying lizard, and they make them bigger and more powerful. They turn them into dragons, and they're able to empathically connect with these dragons at birth. So each dragon has a rider. The riders live in weirs, which are volcanic craters, and they are pledged to protect the rest of the society from the evils of Threadfall, which comes every 200 years and lasts for 50 years. So that's a background on this story. And then there's the political intrigue that comes with any human interactions on a civilization scale. People vying for power, people vying for land, people vying for resources. All of that is involved in these books, and it's involved in this game. So like I said, you're playing We're Leaders. You're trying to work together to keep the planet free from Thread, which is the name of the organism that drops out of the sky. But you're also kind of competing against each other for influence. So there are cards that represent each of the lord holders, who are the leaders of the individual settlements throughout the planet. And you're trying to influence those lord holders so that when a big decision needs to come down, the Weir leader with the most influence is the one that's going to win that decision. Thematically, they nailed the game. It is very, very thematic. I played it with Mark and Dwayne and Frank at our Tuesday game group, and we all agreed that thematically, they absolutely nailed it.
But
mechanically,
yes,
not so much. This is definitely a throwback to before, the golden age of gaming. Yeah, it just didn't work real well mechanically. Yeah.
The mechanics were really bad.
Yeah, the mechanics weren't great.
Okay.
And I just, my sweet husband bought this for me as a very thoughtful gift.
I did.
And it has sat on my shelf for, 5 or 6 years. Unplayed because I was afraid I would be disappointed, and I'm sad to say that I was disappointed. I am going to keep this in my collection because it was a lovely, thoughtful gift from my sweet husband.
Boy, I'm gonna need a bigger hat here in a minute. I'd heard that someone had told me that they actually made a Dragon Riders of Pern board game, and of course, being a big fan of Anne McCaffrey's work, and being married to probably one of the biggest geek girl fangirls of the Dragon Riders series known to exist in the wild, I said, I've got to get one for her. And so I started scrubbing eBay for it. And sure enough, I found one. And I was kind of amazed that it was such a low price. Now I'm not. Now I know why it was a low price, because the game is, Sam Lewis, the designer, way back in 83, you tried, man. You tried. I'll give you props for trying. But, oh boy, did you fail.
Yeah, like I said, I'm going to keep it because I'm such a fan of the books and everything. I read them faithfully once a year, and there's about 18 books in the series or something close to that now. But yeah, I have to give this game a 3, and probably it made it to 3 because I'm such a fangirl.
I gave it a 2.
I would really love it if someone would try to do this again and try to improve on this game. I mean, to me, this game is just screaming for a remake. And what's the name of that publisher?
Restoration.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. And I'm looking at you, Restoration Games. If I know it's a niche game, but, if you can make and improve on Fireball Island, I'm sure that you can make and improve on Dragon Riders of Pern. And yes, I would buy it if you did that. That's Dragon Riders of Pern.
I've got one more thing I want to add to the whole Dragon Riders of Pern. Where's our good Dragon Riders of Pern game? All you movie studios out there, with the CGI that we have today, where in the bloody heck is our Dragon Riders movie?
I would love that.
Oh, just the thought of if you could do How to Train Your Dragon animated, good Lord, people, we can do Pern.
Yes, absolutely. I would love to see a Dragon Riders of Pern movie. So that is Dragon Riders of Pern.
Shut up and take my money.
Yep. So, Mark, what's next on your
next for me, we go back to feudal Japan. This is a game that I know we've talked about on this show before, but we broke it out because Cathy was doing her 572,000 game challenge or something like that. And
my alphabet challenge.
And she needed a game that started with Y. And the only one we could think of that everybody liked was Yedo. So we went back.
And that we own.
Well, that's true. We went back to 1605 Japan, and Tokugawa was the shogun, and we're in Edo, and we're playing clan leaders trying to curry favor with the new shogun and, of course, make our clan the top dog in the city. So this game is part worker placement, part auction, part hand management. It's got a little bit of everything. The board is beautiful, but if you are one of those people who are allergic to busy boards, be forewarned, this game will give you a little bit of eye strain. However, if you like colorful active boards, Yedo's for you. It's a good game.
The artwork is beautiful on it.
Wonderfully crafted. It was published by Thomas van de Ginst and Wolf Plank, and the artist was Franz Vohwinkel. So a bunch of Germans making a Japanese game for IDW, published back in 2012. And you have a clan and you have acolytes that you move around the city to gain resources. You use these resources to complete missions. You complete missions to gain prestige points. After 11 rounds, or if somebody leaps up and ganks the shogun, excuse me.
Which I did.
Yes, you did. And successfully, I might add. The game lasts 11 rounds. One of the neat little mechanisms in this game is there's a constable or police, basically a lawman. Night watchman. Night watchman. Thank you. And not only does he move around the board in order, his move can be influenced by cards that you play, or the other thing that he can do as a result of a mission or a card is he reverses direction. Mm-hmm. So you sneak right in behind him, behind where he's at, and figure, I got it easy, no problem. And then somebody switches direction, and next thing you know, you're got your hands up against the wall. The night watchman is patting you down, and you're saying, "But really, officer, I was only passing through." The missions are straightforward. They're theft, kidnapping, warfare, assassination, and there's, I believe, one other. There are 4 different piles of mission cards. These
Espionage is the
espionage. Thank you. They're green, yellow, red, or the basic black, which is your basically what, let's see, the military among us might call high pucker factor missions. And, you know, I'm feeling big and bad when we were doing our initial mission selection. I said, I'll take a black. Never did manage to get that black mission done. I couldn't get the right assets in the right place. But of course, Cathy just kept plugging along, and she realized, hey, I've got like 80% of this. Let's go ahead and do it.
Uh-huh.
Did you wind up winning that game, or did you?
No, I actually ended up coming in third, even though I ended the game because I assassinated the Shogun. I ended up coming in third because everybody else had done different things that got them more victory points at endgame.
Well, everybody except me. As I recall, I was fourth in a 4-player game on that one. Mm-hmm. I had the Will, and now starring as Will Wheaton. No, this game is really, really good. I can't really say enough good about this game. It does tend to run a little long if you've got people who are analysis paralysis inclined. There are a lot of decisions to make in this game. What do you do? What do you go for? And you have to make them fairly quickly. For a strategy game, it's surprisingly tactical. And for a tactical game, it's surprisingly strategic. Say that 3 times fast. My rating on this is a 4.5, damn near a 5. This is as close to a 5 without actually making a 5 as possible. And the only thing that detracts from this game is the fact that if you are prone to analysis paralysis, find another game. This is a really good game for those who can make quick decisions. And your decision-making process will be put to the test. In fact, I'm going to sit here, I'm going to change my rating with the asterisk that says, unless AP prone, and make it a buy this now. It's still in print as far as I know. And it's IDW Games, among other publishers, but IDW was the American publisher. And like I said, this game rocks.
Yeah, I enjoy it too. And I would absolutely give it a 5 with the same caveat. If you're prone to analysis paralysis, you don't want to play this game. But otherwise, go for it. It's a great worker placement game.
All right. So, Cathy, what's your last game for today?
The last game I'm going to talk about is called Dice of Crowns. It was designed by Sean Epperson and Brandon Badger Roulette. And it's published by Thing 12 Games. I found the demo of this done by Thing 12 Games at KublaCon and thought it was quirky enough that, I wanted to get myself a copy of it. So in this, the king has died and his crown is up for grabs. This is a dice rolling. You're playing with D6s again. It's a dice rolling game where you're trying to earn enough tokens to claim the crown. There are 2 different modes to it. There's a basic mode where you first person with 3 tokens wins. And then there's a more advanced mode where you're playing to 5 tokens, but there's some extra added rules in it. The dice, like I said, are D6s. 2 sides have scrolls on them. 2 sides have skulls on them. 1 side has a sword and 1 side has a crown. And so you're rolling these 7 dice on your turn. And if you get crowns, you get to keep those back. And you're trying to get 3 crowns on your turn in order to get a token. If you get skulls, you get to re-roll those. If you get scrolls, you have to give those out to your adversaries and they roll them. And if they get a crown, they get to keep the crown. If they get a sword, they get to give it to you. And if they get a skull, that goes back to you as well, and you can either re-roll it or try and get enough skulls to claim the crown. If you get any swords on your roll, you also pull those out. 3 swords means your turn is done. 3 crowns means your turn is done, but you get a token, a scoring token, and then it moves on to the next one. And this game plays really quickly. Mark and I managed to play 2 games in about 20 minutes, and that was teaching Mark the game and figuring out the advanced rules for the second game. It's a fun little filler game. and I give it a 4. That could go up a little bit with more plays of it. But yeah, I think it's a fun little filler game. I think I would happily introduce this to family and friends, coworkers. And it's small enough, it's in a little mint tin, so it would drop into a purse or a pocket. And I'm really enjoying it. And that is Dice of Crowns. What did you think of it, Mark?
I thought this was really cool. Like you said, quick little filler game. If you just want to roll some dice for a while, this is good. When you told me about the rule about the 3 bloody swords, and yes, they are on the dice bloodied.
Mm-hmm.
3 bloody swords and your turn is over. I thought immediately of zombie dice. Damn shotguns. And there is a little bit of a parallel here, but not really. It's as much a parallel as there would be in any dice game, because after about third or fourth turn into the game, I was immediately thinking combat Yahtzee.
Kind of,
yeah. Because, she rolls her dice, and the first time she handed me more than 3 scrolls, I'm going, I get to roll these? Okay, cool. Boom. Oh, dear me, I rolled 2 swords. You have 1. Boom. Or, I rolled 2 crowns. I'll take those. Thank you. Yeah, it's fun. There's just enough take that to make for anybody other than the most ultimate Care Bear. I'm talking to you, Sarah. But it's really fun. And in fact, we have developed a new sigil for Cathy, because she multiple times, 2 or 3, I think 3 times during the game, she rolled her 3rd crown at the same time she rolled her 3rd sword.
And
that means you don't get the token, you don't get the crowns, you lose your turn. And she said, instead of the crown landing on her head, it landed on your neck. And I said, no, it just landed points first. So an upside down crown with blood dripping from the points of the crown is Cathy's new sigil now. Points first. Yeah, a fun game. Really good.
All right. And that's what we've been playing. We have set up and been referring to and rating games by our own rating scale. Here's how we are using this scale. 5. Buy this now. 4. A good solid game. 3. Decent with some bugs. 2. Has great potential as kindling. And 1. Give me back the time I spent playing it. Today for the interview, I am pleased to welcome back to the show Heather O'Neill from Ninth Level Games. She visited us back in episode 20 to talk about barricades, and again in episode 54 to talk about an RPG and LARP game called Tragedies of Middle School. Today she has another project on Kickstarter called Meeple Party. Heather, welcome back to Our Turn.
Thanks, Cathy.
So both of your previous projects that you've been involved with funded, and Meeple Party looks like it's doing very well, too. Tell me about this game.
Great, yeah. Meeple Party has been on Kickstarter just about a week, doing pretty well. This is a board game, a little different for us, but it is a co-op strategy board game that's basically at its heart a puzzle where you're trying to set up situations at a party. And all of the players are roommates who are hosting the party.
Oh, okay.
You play a different personality. So I'm maybe the jerk or the party animal or the wallflower. And all of the guests have different personalities like that. Maybe the flirt or the cool person. And based off of the type of meeple they are is what their movement is. So let's say I'm a flirt. I go into a room. I attract someone to me from the adjacent room. If I'm a jerk, I go into a room. I push someone 2 rooms away because I'm really horrible to be around. So what you're doing is you're manipulating all the guests by using those movements, set up specific situations. So that's at its heart what you're doing.
All of these meeples are color-coded, right?
color coded. There are stickers that will have the symbols on it if you cannot see color.
Okay.
And we're hoping maybe for a stretch goal to actually drill in the middle their little symbol, like a little heart or a flower or something, if we can get an upgrade to that stretch goal.
Okay.
Yeah, basically, this is guised, that crazy movement is actually guised by the fun of the party. So what you're doing is every turn, you welcome a guest. And you do that by pulling a meeple out of a bag at random. And whatever type of meeple that is, you add them to the party and you do their movement. So if it, like I said, if it's a flirt, it pulls people. If it's a jerk, for example, it pushes people. Then you can mingle anybody around. You can trade in your cards. You can do different things. But what you're trying to do is set up situations to take photos. So it might say, champagne toast, I need one of each color in the kitchen. Or karaoke, I need 2 flirts and 3 party animals in the living room. So you need to set up this situation basically to score points.
Oh, okay.
And the idea is that, of course, just like any party, there could be potential disasters. So, maybe the power goes out or there's a noise violation. So everybody has a disaster they got to look out for too, which puts a restriction on how easy it is for you to move around. So even though it's cooperative, every player is going to have their own disaster they kind of watch out for, and 2 photos they're always working towards getting. And you do this together, you advance the time clock, points in quotes, and then if you make it through the party, you all win. And that's pretty much it. It's just moving people around and trying to take photos and eat cake and hit a piñata and that kind of fun stuff that you would have at a party. So.
Now, you said if you make it through the party, you win.
Right.
So what's something that could take you out of the party?
If these disasters keep happening, you could stress out and the party could end. So there's not a specific number of disasters that would make it end, but basically every time a disaster occurs, everybody takes a stress.
Oh, and everybody has like a stress meter?
Yes, there's 3 stress, you stress out. So you might say, that's 3 disasters, we lose. Not necessarily, because there's ways to heal stress, and you can go eat cake, or you can, there's different ways you can do this to help out your fellow players. So there's things that you can do that maybe it'll be 4 disasters before you lose. But you definitely don't want to be getting too many disasters to try to make it through the party. So the idea is, how can I avoid this problem and keep it under, at bay? Maybe it's, the noise violation. I got to keep people outside to a minimum. How can I still meet my goals while doing that? And it's cooperative, so everyone could talk about it and say, hey, you know what?
Oh, okay.
If you can't do it this time, I can get it next time, or I'll take care of those people outside for you, that kind of thing. So you cooperatively are discussing the next play, just like you would in a real party with your real host. Like, okay, I got this, but can you take care of this for me? And, I can get these 2 photos if you guys can handle that problem. So that's kind of the discussion point, what everybody's doing. The nice thing is, as a lot of co-op games have, quarterbacking problems or alpha gamer problems, as whatever you want to call it. The nice thing is everybody's got their own goals in front of them. So even if somebody wants to tell everybody what to do, there's still your turn with your goals, and that's what you have to go towards. So they can talk all they want, but you've got to do your thing. So what I find is in this game, there's less and less of that than there are in some other games where you're all cooperatively making moves. So that is nice. And it's about a party. So the idea is it's not that serious. We're not wargaming here, and it's not life or death. You can just play again if you don't win. So, we keep it light, and the party is also light in the vibe too. So everything's very PG-13. There are, of course, references to drinking, but nothing over the top. It's just...
Sure, it could be punch instead of mixed drinks or something like that.
Right. It shows a solo cup. If you want to interpret it what a solo cup is, that's up to you. You know what I mean? Okay. That kind of thing. Definitely played it with a bunch of different age groups. Probably the lowest was 12 or 13, and they seem to get it, and families seem to be fine, with the whole... The tones and the themes aren't too much.
Okay, so it's a good family weight game.
Right, which is what I wanted. I didn't want it to go, in that regard. I like throwing parties. I always remember the fun of that. And when I made this game, it kind of made it on slightly abstract. It was a house, but the idea was still kind of abstract. And then I'm like, I kind of want to do a fun theme instead of like zombies and war. And, a lot of co-op games are not fun, happy themes, right? So I was trying to think of ways to put it more to our style and my style and what would be a fun thing to do in a co-op situation. So that's where this came from.
Nice. Now, you have 5 different personalities in this game. How did you settle on these 5 personalities as opposed to, something else?
Well, what I found was 5 different movements was really the most movements I wanted to have. So, for example, the flirt, which is, it pulls somebody from one away. The inverse of that is the wallflower, which pushes somebody one away. And we're not saying anything wrong. Is anything wrong with being a wallflower? It's just there's not as much going on, so people leave the room. Okay. Then you've got your jerk, which pushes somebody 2 rooms away. But then the inverse of that is a party animal, and it pulls somebody from 2 rooms away because they're so loud and people want to see what's going on. So they're basically just the inverse movements. And then the cool just can pull 2 people from either the same adjacent room or multiple adjacent rooms. So we found that movement is the simplest to get and accomplishes everything we need. And then it was really kind of funny because when I was going through this, I play tested a lot of different names for those personalities. And I didn't, it wasn't like this has to be gender neutral, but at the same time I wanted it to be gender neutral. I didn't want something that people would say, oh, well, she always does this or he always does that, or make it, in any way like too telling or too mature in any way. So this is what we settled on. And a lot of people do say the flirt is a girl, and a lot of people do say the jerk is a guy, but not everybody. And we don't say that, and it's not implied anywhere, and you can take that as you will. But that's what we ended up doing. We just kind of, I threw all my playtesting. I tried different things, and, I had best friend for a while. I had, a couple of different, I had, like the foot or the jock, I had a couple other things. And then I realized these were really the more core personalities. So they seem to fit better with the movements. Yep. And then what we did is some of the things we had thought about that I had been testing out, I put in as surprises. So there's a whole nother category where if you pull a white meeple out of the bag, you pull a surprise card and do an event instead of moving anybody. Oh, and that's where I threw a lot of the fun other ideas that were too specific. That's where the musician is, and the close talker, and, the jock, for example, and the class clown, and those kind of other things, the boss, or, other people that would be at a party that just didn't fit in having a specific movement. So that's how we themed that up. Yep.
How many players can this game accommodate?
Up to 5. It is 1 to 5. So the gameplay is not any different. You still have the same number of stress per player, so you could totally play this solo, or 5. And the time doesn't really take too much longer with 5 unless people are just taking very long turns. The thing that usually makes the game longer is the difficulty level or the party you choose. So I don't know if you had seen that there's 2 different party options, and there's going to be 3, and 3 different difficulty levels as well that are options. Okay. So if you've ever played like a Forbidden Island or something like that, you can pick your difficulty level, right? So similarly, I'm suggesting standard, which is you have 1 disaster per person. You can play it really easy, and there's only 1 disaster for the whole party. And that's, hey, I want to just have fun. We want to just do the experience. We don't want to be worrying about stressing out too much. And we kind of just want to play for fun and worry about one thing. Because the more disasters there are, the more variables you have to check each turn. And that can slow things down. Oh, whoops, over here, this is, in conflict with that, for example. So we found that is the number one thing that slows people's turns down. So that's where we made the difficulty. And then if you want to play the epic crazy party, it's 2 disasters, 1 per player and 1 communal that everybody has. Okay. So again, that would be 2 things to check each turn. And it just takes a little bit more time because maybe you thought you had it and then you realize you got a disaster and now you have to kind of backtrack for the next few turns and fix things. So for people who want that, and a lot of the playtesters wanted that, it's there, but we suggest the middle level to have a 45-minute game experience. If you want to play longer, that's great. But if you want to play like a 30 to 60 minute, depending on, how long you guys take to set up, this is what we suggest.
Sounds like a lot of fun. How long does this campaign run for?
It's going to be running till October 25th.
Okay. And today, the day that we're recording this is October 3rd, so plenty of time ahead.
Plenty of time. And like I said, the game's actually been in design for a while. And I was going to launch spring. It didn't work out. I had to push it back. So the nice thing is most of the things are done. The art's done. Even my first 3 or 4 stretch goals, I know what they are, and I'm excited about them, and I hope that they make it in the game. So I'm hoping that means that it'll be a quick production and time, and hopefully have it out in the spring is what I'm looking for.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask you, when can backers expect to have it delivered?
I would like it to be before June, but I promise the summer just to be on the safe side. But I'm hoping for Origins that we'll have it, if possible.
Oh, nice. Okay.
If possible. So that's kind of the timeline. And basically, the other nice thing about the game is it's quite modular. You can build the house yourself. Each room is a tile. So you can say, I want to have 3 bedrooms and a living room and 2 bathrooms, or I want to have the kitchen over here next to the garage, or however you want to do it. And based off how you set it up, there'll be suggested setups that are easier to move around, but that can add to the difficulty of even the base game because you've set your house up maybe in a U shape and now you've got to get from one side all the way around to the other. So it lets the players kind of mess around with it, even if they're playing with the same people or the same difficulty level. They can play around and maybe make their house or try different things. So,
wow. So there's lots of ways to make it variable.
There's a lot of variability with it. And, we have our suggested setup. And almost every time I play test it, I pretty much play it the same way because I know that it works. But once you've played it a few times, you know what you can do with it. And it's going to be a lot harder, but you can set up the house anyway, and it still works. Okay. But it's going to be a lot harder to win. And just like any co-op game, you don't want to necessarily always win. But because this is a party theme, that's why I have the easy level on there for, hey, we just want the fun experience. We don't need to sit here and, spend 3 hours trying to get the perfect score. Whereas people who've played it a lot might say, okay, I want to try it on difficult. I want to see if we can perfect this without taking any stress and get through the party or whatever their criteria might be. And then, it gives more replayability that way too. So.
Okay.
Now, this is your 3rd Kickstarter campaign. Do you feel like an old hat at this yet, or is this still stressful and exciting?
It's funny. It seemed like the lead up seemed not a problem, but yet again, right when I went to launch, a little bit stressful again. And, a couple ups and downs throughout the first week where I thought things were going good, then they weren't going as good than they were. So, it still hits you the same way because it's making it real. It's a reality once you click that button, right? It's all talk until you click that button. So that is, I think, really what the stress is. But I knew we were ready, and I know we're ready to produce it. It's a hard thing to do. Also, for me personally, this is the first larger product that we're making that has tiles and meeples and a bag and, a lot of components. So pricing that out, figuring out what the stretch goals were going to be, and not understanding quite how to price it. That took us a couple months to figure that out. But then once we got that, we knew where we needed to be. And that was probably my most stressful part.
So what lessons have you learned from doing these Kickstarters?
Well, I think the number one lesson that I've learned was, if you think it's going to take 9 months, say 12 months, because delivery sometimes takes a little bit longer than I think.
Give yourself a little leeway.
And the other thing I would say is, that I don't want to overpromise things in stretch goals that I don't think about the pricing down the road, right? So one of our Kickstarters way back, Schrodinger's Cats, which was 2015, we hit so many stretch goals. It wasn't that it cost us a lot of money. It was just a lot of time because the last week we kept hitting stretch goals and we kind of ran out of ideas. So we're like, how about this? How about this? How about this? And it was fun stuff, and we were excited we did it, and then we thought, oh, maybe that we shouldn't have promised that, because we kind of on the fly did that. So I'll be a little more careful, and I already have been with Barricades and Tragedies with not over-promising the world. That can always be a fun expansion that we can do later. So, I mean, it's just, time gets away from you no matter what. And when you're designing, and then you're dealing with manufacturing, you're dealing with distribution, as you probably know. It's like, I'm using Kickstarter to make the game, to get it out there. And people are probably getting enough extra rewards, but I always feel like they're not getting enough, and I want to keep giving them more and more and more. So yeah, and it's fun. You get kind of caught up in it, especially the last couple of days. So I mean, we'll definitely do fun stuff, but I'm gonna have to just reel it in for myself personally, because I mean, there's the list of ideas I had for this game were probably in the hundreds, and I thought, no, we gotta put some boundaries around this, because it's just it's such a relatable concept, and such a easy concept to just keep riffing and adding ideas to. We really had to hardline it and say, okay, you know what? Maybe we don't. For example, one of the thoughts was we were going to add a bunch of holiday stuff. We might still do that in the Kickstarter, but we're really backing down the holidays, because that could be a whole nother thing. So
sure, that could be a great expansion too.
Exactly. So there was so many ideas with that. So many ideas with additional meeple, which are going to be part of the game, hopefully. So it's a good problem to have, that there's so many ideas, but at the same time, one of the problems of what I think our group always has is we get so excited about everything, and we have so many ideas, we don't want to not do them. So
sure.
Yeah, so I'm hoping we can do them, but just got to keep myself in check a little bit this time.
Okay. So what's in the pipeline for 9th level games after this?
Well, after this, we're going to be doing a lot of shows like PAX Unplugged and Emerald City and Gamma and a bunch of things throughout the next year. The next big product that we're going to come out with is another RPG called Issues, where you are creating issues of a comic book. And it's more of a storytelling game where you collaborate on what type of message you're going to have, what year is it, what's your superhero like, etc., etc. And you together are an editor, a writer, and an artist, and you create the comic book. And you can switch roles. We suggest switching roles, but that's one of the things that we're looking at. We've got a lot of comic book RPG writers and comic book artists involved for that one. So that's going to be a 2019 Kickstarter. So that's our big RPG release. And then we've got a couple of board game potentials in the works that you might hear of. One is Pavlov's Dogs, which is the lead up to Schrodinger's Cats that came out in 2016. And then another one is called Welcome to Iceberg, which is a series of icebergs in the North Pole, or South Pole, I guess it would be, with penguins. And penguins are walking around, trying to do business in their little town of Iceberg. So we've got a couple of those in the work that might hit Kickstarter in 19 if we can get them together. So.
I don't know what it is about penguins, but every penguin-themed game I've ever played has been a riot.
They are funny, and it was we did this, and we've just kind of riffed on it. We thought, should we do polar bears and this and seals? And we're like, no, penguins are really, really funny. We should probably just keep the penguins. So we're working on that one, and Pavlov's Dogs as well, which is going to be cute with a bunch of dogs, and I'm excited about that one too. So
nice. Well, I hope when these hit Kickstarter, you'll come back and tell us about them again.
I will.
All right. So how can people connect with you online?
You can either go to our website, which is just 9th level, 9thlevel.com, or follow us at Twitter at 9th level, 9thlevel. Also, we're on Instagram at 9th level games, if you want to follow any images with us. Yes.
So we'll have all that information in the show notes, and you can find our show notes at ourturnpodcast.com/episode 85. Heather, thanks for coming on.
Thanks a lot, Cathy.
Today for the Hot Topic, Mark and I are talking about game expansions. We have several games that any expansion that comes out is a must purchase. I'm looking right at my copy of Firefly, but also Star Trek Ascendancy, Doctor Who, Time of the Daleks, and Unfair. So, what makes an expansion a must-have, and what makes an expansion a poor addition to a game? Mark, I named some of my favorite games with expansions. What are some of yours?
Well, the biggest one has to be Power Grid. I love the way that Power Grid has set up these different map expansions. They either increase or can even in some cases decrease the complexity of the game. There are maps that are really good to introduce to beginners, and there are maps which if you want to go away from this table with your brain melted and leaking out your ears, and I'm looking at the Korea board or the Australia board or the India board, they've got that too.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
And I really think the secret to a good expansion isn't so much adding new rules to the game, but it's just adding more game.
That's true.
Firefly has been great with that. Power Grid has been great with that. I am absolutely certain that that's the secret to a really good expansion.
Yes. Now, there are differences in what expansions add. For example, Machikoro, when its first expansion came out, and I'm drawing a blank on what the name of it is, but the first expansion that came out for it, it actually fixed a couple of things in the base game, and it made it a better game. So that one I absolutely think is a must-have for, if you're a Machikoro fan. Well, being a Machikoro fan, we went and bought the second expansion, which was Millionaire's Row, and I thought that expansion broke the game.
Yeah, it pretty well did.
And what was even more frustrating is that none of the cards were labeled with the expansion, which expansion it came from. So once you've shuffled them in, you're going to be kind of hit and miss on getting them out again. Whereas in my favorite game, Firefly, every card that was added to the game after the base game is labeled with its expansion. It's got a little symbol on it for which expansion it came from. So if you want to exclude an expansion, you can. If you just want to play with the base game, first thing you have to do is go through and pull out all the expansion cards. But I do think that the expansions for Firefly added more territories, they added more challenges, they added more missions, they added more contacts, and all it did was accentuate the flavor of the theme of the game, which is the show Firefly. Now, another one that I have enjoyed and am looking forward to exploring as we add more to it is Star Trek Ascendancy.
That's a good example there, because it started out with the three factions, Klingons, Romulans, and Federation. Mm-hmm. And they added the Ferengi and the Cardassians, and then they added the Borg. The Borg.
Yeah. Well, the Borg is an NPC in that game, so it suddenly turns a basic 3-player game into a good 2-player game. Because you had to have, in order to play the game, you had to have 3 players to play each faction, minimum. But now with the Borg, we can sit down and play it 2-player and have this NPC character as the 3rd player, which I'm not usually a fan of a dummy player, but in this case, it works.
Yeah, agreed. And one of your favorite games that added, when it did expansions originally, it just added more game as opposed to more complexity or just more rules. And that was Robo Rally. Originally, it was a game with 2 expansions. Mm-hmm. And now it's just a one prepackaged game. And I'm kind of sad to see that, because those 2 expansions, some of those map grids for those expansions were harrowing. Yeah. Yes, I'm looking at the pit.
Yeah. That one did, I think it came out before Power Grid, and it did what Power Grid did later. It added new maps. new factory floors with new challenges. And I love playing the more challenging games, but I'm also happy to just sit down and play the base version as well. One game that we have all the expansions for and we enjoy playing, but some of the expansions are good and some of the expansions aren't, is Battlestar Galactica. I don't remember which expansion it was, but there's one where you're landing on New Caprica and going through that whole dreary time, and nobody ever wants to play that. Ever.
Yeah,
because it's just no fun.
Because living in a dictatorial society is so much fun.
Right. But they did it to be true to the television show. And I think that they did it well. It's just not fun.
Agreed.
Thematically, they did it well. Mechanically, they did it well. It's just depressing. Whereas, at least when you're, on the Galactica or the Pegasus and you're trudging through the universe looking for Earth or Cobol, there's hope. In the expansion that added New Caprica, there's very little hope. And I think that's why people don't like to play it. But as I recall, that expansion also added some interesting rules and mechanics that can be played in the rest of the game. And so we play with that part of it, but not necessarily the rest of it. And I think that's okay, too. Now, what about games that there are no expansions for them and there are none planned?
I got one right off the bat.
Sure.
Euphoria.
Now, I think that's one that it could do with an expansion. I'm not sure what. It's not my universe to play with. It does have a prequel that another designer did, and that's Leaders of Euphoria. Choose a Better Oppressor is the name of the game. It's based on Good Cop, Bad Cop, but that's not an expansion. Now, a game that I think is just fine the way it is, doesn't need any expansions, it could probably come out with some further expansions, and that's Mechs vs. Minions. But you don't often see expansions for legacy games, which Mechs vs. Minions is. You more see sequels.
Right.
Like with the Pandemic Legacy games or the Time Stories games.
Yeah, I've heard people say that Time Stories has great expansions, but it doesn't. Those aren't expansions. They're different games using similar mechanics.
Well, you have to have the base game to play the expansions.
Right, but the only reason you need the base game is for the mechanical bits. The board, the pieces, the time track. Everything else you need to play is self-contained in the little boxes that come out with the new missions.
Yeah, the new decks.
And you don't have to play one of the new missions to get the full flavor of the game by playing the other missions. For instance, you don't have to play the Marcy case to get the flavor for Dance of Dragons.
Right.
So those are almost individual games.
It's more episodic?
Yes, perfect. Episodic. That's the word I was looking for. Mm-hmm. So those are really that's not really an expansion. And when I brought up Euphoria, it's not so much because I feel it needs an expansion. I don't think there's any way you're going to be able to expand that game. That game is a nice, self-contained game just by itself. I don't think you can expand it without breaking it.
You don't think so?
I don't think so.
Okay. Now, are there any games that you've seen that have come out with expansions and you were like, oh, that was a bad idea?
I'd like to think I have, but the thing is that if they come out with a bad expansion, I just stay away from it.
Yeah.
I don't have any right to mind at hand.
The one I was thinking of is, I haven't played it, but I've heard that the expansion for Stone Age is not very good.
Yes, that is the one I've heard about. Yeah, they kind of take a left turn at Albuquerque and start getting into luxury goods and jewelry in a Stone Age motif. I somehow don't think that really fits in very well. I've heard that mechanically it just sort of lacks. And it's kind of like grafting a tail on a human. Not really necessary, but yeah, you can do it.
Yep.
And another one that I'm kind of ambivalent on is the expansions to Lords of Waterdeep. the Skullport, and there were two that they let out about the same time. They even packaged them in one box. It adds corruption and skull. It's just, it kind of distracts from the main point of the game. It could be that I just haven't played it long enough to fall in love with it, but I do think Lords of Waterdeep is a great game. I'm just not sure that they took that expansion quite in the direction that maybe it should have gone.
Okay. Now, what about when there are just too many expansions?
Oh, you're talking about, what is the name of that game? The one that Frank likes, the big Cthulhu one.
Oh, Elder Sign? Oh,
No,
Arkham
the
Horror.
Big one, Arkham Horror. Yeah.
I was thinking more along the lines of Munchkin.
Munchkin, yeah. But the thing is that Munchkin's expansions can each be played as standalone games.
That's true.
Because you've got Zombie Munchkin and you've got Munchkin Apocalypse. You've got The Good, the Bad, the Munchkin, Space Munchkin. They all can be played separately. And, of course, there's our favorite combination, Space Munchkin and The Good, the Bad, and the Munchkin make Firefly Munchkin because it's Western in space. But, yeah, when you start getting to a game that's got so many different cards, it's almost like it's trying to be Magic the Gathering. And then, of course, Steve Jackson came out with the Munchkin collectible card game.
We've stayed away from that.
Oh, yes. I have so abstained from it. And I'm usually one of the first people to at least consider buying, when I see new Munchkin. I go, ooh. But, the Munchkin CCG, I'm just not interested. I've been there. I've done that. I've got the play mats in several different sizes. And, just not happening. Thank you, Steve Jackson. Build more ogre.
So ultimately, our verdict is that a good expansion adds to the game, it adds to the theme, and it doesn't necessarily increase the complexity. It just increases the enjoyment of the game?
Well, I like to use a cooking analogy. It's like seasoning a dish. Just the right amount of seasoning, it's going to be beautiful. It's going to be perfect. It's going to be better than it was without it. Too much, and you have an inedible mess.
Yes, that's true.
And there are some dishes that don't need anything. Just walk away. It's perfect. Some dishes need a little variation. We'll take this set of seasonings and make it one way, and this set of seasonings and make it another way. And then there are some games that just need just that little bit of seasoning to take a good game and make it into an extremely good game. So that's my 2 cents.
So what do you think makes an expansion must have versus stay away from it, or something in between? And what are your favorite expansions to games? You can tell us in the Guild on BoardGameGeek.com. We're Guild number 2600. Or let us know on Twitter. I'm at Our Turn Podcast on Twitter or on Facebook. Sarah runs our Facebook page. Go ahead and comment on this episode, which is episode number 85. And let us know. What do you think makes a good expansion? What are your favorite expansions? We'd love to hear from you.
What turns an expansion from a must to a bust?
There you go. All right. Thanks for joining me for this, Mark.
Anytime, Cathy. Anytime.
All right, so now we're getting to the end of the episode, and now is when we talk about what we're looking forward to in the next week or two. Mark, what have you got on the table for the next week or so?
Well, you and I are both going to a West Coast Mega Games event on Sunday night. They're actually doing a testing of a board game, a mega board game called Night Falls. It's humans versus vampires. Going in, we don't know what we're going to be or who we're going to be yet. We don't find out if we're on the human team or the vampire team until we get there.
Right.
I'm looking forward to testing their games. I look forward to playing in their games. So hopefully this will be an absolute blast. I'm looking forward to. I'm also looking forward to getting deeper into the Battle for Azeroth expansion for World of Warcraft. Now that we've finally gotten moved and finally gotten everything set up, I've finally been able to play Warcraft again, and I'm gotten one of my characters all the way through the expansion, and now I'm working on one of my alts, and I'm having as much fun or more the second time through. After I do this one, I'll probably switch over to the Horde side and see what it's like on the other side of the fence. But other than that, looking forward to Conquest in the next month or so. But other than that, just looking forward to being your husband.
Aw, thank you, sweetheart.
You're welcome, my darling.
I'm looking forward to the Nightfalls mega board game as well. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. I need to sit down and read the rules because we're doing that tomorrow night from when we're recording this. I am also very happy that I have finished one of my 3 board game challenges for 2018. I finished the Alphabet Challenge. So I've been able to play 26 games, each starting with a different letter of the alphabet. And I'm close to finishing my 52 game challenge. I think I've got 5 or 6 games left on that one. And on my 1x100 challenge, I think I'm at 83 games out of 100 games for the year. So making good progress on those. And we have, as I mentioned earlier in the show, we have our Tuesday afternoon game group with Dwayne and Frank. We all get together on Tuesday afternoons and play some games. And I'm looking forward to getting Leaders of Euphoria, Choose a Better Oppressor, to the table. It's a prequel to Euphoria. It's set in the same world. It's based on Good Cop, Bad Cop. And the big reason why I'm looking forward to getting this to the table is that in November at Conquest Avalon, I'm running a dystopian doubleheader. I'm running Leaders of Euphoria. And then once we're done playing that, we're going to get into playing Euphoria, Build a Better Dystopia. And I love the Euphoria universe. I think it's really well put together. It's very kind of tongue-in-cheek stab at the dystopian concept. And I really enjoy that whole idea. And then I'm running some other stuff. I haven't finalized everything I'm running yet at Conquest Avalon, but I'm really looking forward to it. And I'm looking forward to running this doubleheader as well. So, all right, Mark, where can people find you online?
Well, if you want to find me on Twitter, I'm at The Amused Geek. And that stems from I used to be disgusted. Now I'm just amused. You can also find me on Facebook under my real name. Oh, my goodness. And if you really need to get a hold of me, you can always smuggle a question into the guild. And I'm sure Cathy will forward it over to me.
Yes, I will. And you can find me on Twitter. I'm at Our Turn Podcast. And I also am a person that runs and monitors the guild, which is guild number 2600 on BoardGameGeek.com. And you can always ask questions and make comments over on Facebook if that's your preferred social media platform. Sarah Reed does a fabulous job of running our Facebook page over there, so check it out. It's facebook.com/OurTurnPodcast. Thank you so much, sweetheart, for joining me for this episode. I appreciate it.
It has, as always, been an absolute pleasure recording with you. I like getting out on this side of the mic once in a while.
Well, I'm glad to have you anytime. All right. On behalf of the entire Our Turn podcast crew, that was our turn.
Now it's yours.
Thank you for listening. This episode was recorded on October 13th, 2018, and is written and produced by Cathy Ford and Mark Ford with assistance from Heather O'Neill. We want and encourage your questions, comments, and feedback. Please call 916-426-2873 and leave us a short voicemail, or send an email to feedback@ourturnpodcast.com. Our theme music was composed by Adriana Crickle. Incidental music was provided by Purple Planet Music. Please check out our show notes to learn more about these talented artists. The material in this episode is copyrighted under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. If you want to learn more about the games discussed in this episode, please visit our website at ourturnpodcast.com/episode 85. You can find a list of the games along with links to their listing on BoardGameGeek.com. We are proud members of the Dice Tower Network. You can find out about other shows in the network like Board Games Insider, Four Corners of the Board, or Out of Game by going to Dicetowernetwork.com. Thank you for your support. If you like what you heard, please tell your friends about us.